Howdy. This audio lecture is for the course INST 222, Foundations of Education in a Multicultural Society. Our topic is the 4 E's of multicultural education. The 4 E's of multicultural education are important because they help serve as the pillars which prop up the field of multicultural education. The observant practitioner and scholar recognizes these 4 E's as the central themes or pillars of a multicultural educator's pedagogy and curriculum. They help to summarize the overall ideology and practice of multicultural education. And so pillar 1 would be educational achievement. And this refers to academic goals achieved by a student. We all can wrap our brains around that very simple and eloquent definition. The second E is empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. Equity, now be very clear that equity is different from equality, and often persons will use these words interchangeably, and they should not, because they mean different things. So equality means sameness for all, but equity means doing different things to achieve similar results. And for the multicultural educator, he or she may sometimes understand that they may need to adjust the learning experiences in their classroom for learners who may speak another language, who may have a physical or mental disability, or may be impoverished and may not have the materials that they need. So equity means to be able to utilize different instructional approaches with diverse learners in order to achieve similar results. The fourth E is self-esteem, which is highly related to encouragement. And self-esteem means one's own self-worth or self-respect. It's confidence in one's own worth or abilities, usually gained through encouragement. And so as we look at this huge field of multicultural education, if we had to summarize the overall ideology and the practice, for me as an educator, it would boil down to these 4 E's. Now, where did these 4 E's come from? Well, the first 3 of the 4 E's come from a very esteemed scholar by the name of Patricia Marshall. And one of her many books she's written is called Cultural Diversity in Our Schools, and you can find this diagram in that reading. And I love how she breaks down multicultural education for us. So if you take a look at the diagram and look at the top half of it, she tells us that multicultural education is a dualistic approach. And this is why so many people get the field absolutely incorrect. And they think it's just about studying others. And for teachers who study multicultural education, they think it's about studying their kids who speak another language or from different ethnicities or different socioeconomic statuses. And that's part of the study. But to really understand multicultural education, part of understanding it is understanding yourself. So if you go through a course and you don't do the hard work of reflecting on yourself as well as thinking about who others are, then you haven't really done multicultural education. Perhaps you're doing a watered down version of it. But true multicultural education involves this dualistic approach, meaning that you do focus on others, but you have to as well focus on yourself. If we look at the bottom half of the diagram, we see the 3 parts of the definition, and we see the first 3 E's, or the first 3 pillars that help to prop up this field, and that is educational achievement and empathy and equity. Now, on the right is the 4th E of multicultural education, and that is self-esteem. And you know, Wikipedia, when they share the definition, it says that these are experiences in a person's life that really give the major source of self-esteem development. That means all the experiences in your life. And believe it or not, students are bringing their sense of who they are into our classrooms, and we need to be aware of that. We also need to be aware that our learning experiences for learners also affect their self-esteem. So we have to be careful of the kinds of content we share in our classrooms. Does it reflect who our learners are? Does your content show people of color as well as our white brothers and sisters, persons with disabilities, as well as the able-bodied? Are we sharing um, examples of our GLBT sisters and brothers, Muslim, Jewish, and folks from all faiths in our curriculum as well? And we don't want teachers to feel overwhelmed by this, but when there are opportunities to show diverse perspectives from different people from around our beautiful country, we should seize those opportunities because students need to see them. So all experiences in life, outside of the classroom as well as inside of the classroom, affect students' self-esteem. The 4 E's of multicultural education, again on this slide, we have at the top self-esteem, then equity, educational achievement, and empathy. The purpose of this slide is to let you all know that there are, if one did a Google search, you could find hundreds of thousands of studies that have been done on all 4 of these E's that connect to the issue of learning. So I want us to know that they're really important, and that research has really shown us that these 4 E's aren't just hypothetical, but there is fundamental research that demonstrates that these E's matter in the classroom. For example, if we look at the issue of self-esteem, there's a journal article by Van Nies on self-esteem of learners. We also, if we look in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, we'll find a ton of information on self-concept learning and self-esteem. Over and over again, each one of these 4 E's, each one of these 4 pillars, there is a wealth of research that demonstrates that if we pay attention to these, overarching ideas and pay attention to real practices that can change the experiences for our learners, then we can have a real impact on achievement inside the classroom. So they're not just fanciful and whimsical, but they absolutely have real meaning when it comes to making a real effect on achievement and learning inside the classroom. We go on to this next slide. We take a look at one particular study in particular, and on one particular E. And we're going to look at the E of empathy. This pillar is so important because it's the one that really can make a difference in the life chances of students. We all say as teachers, I love kids. But in actuality, a lot of us say these words, but don't actually mean it. We talk it, but we don't actually walk it. And this particular study is called Empathy, Interaction, and Caring, Teachers' Roles in a Constrained Environment. And it was written in the Journal of Pastoral Care and Education in 2004 by Dr. Cooper. So what he did was he conducted a qualitative research study, and in this study he identified 16 empathetic teachers. Now, how he identified them doesn't go into the article with how that was done, but I don't know if they were self-selected or if outside folks selected them. And these were student teachers as well as teachers who were in practice as well. And the researcher conducted 60 classroom observations. And so I want you to go to the article, pages 14 through 15, and take a look at the methodology. Methodology is just a fancy word for like how the study was conducted. So take a look at the methodology a little bit more for how this study was done. And I want you, throughout your reading, to pay attention to these words that you'll be responsible for in later assessments. Empathy, fundamental empathy, profound empathy, functional empathy, feigned empathy, and the 3 types of empathetic interactions in the classroom. Now, the article on page 14 gives us a beautiful definition of empathy, a little different from the definition we just read a bit earlier. And the author defines empathy is a quality shown by individuals which enables them to accept others for who they are, to feel and perceive situations from their perspective, and to take a constructive and long-term attitude towards the advancement of their situation by searching for solutions to meet their needs. Wow, that's a mouthful. But, for me, quite simply, empathy is the ability to see life through the experiences of others and to have an attitude of acceptance about that. It's the ability to want to put on the shoes of someone who is different from you, right? To put on the shoes of someone else. And when we look at this issue of empathy, Cooper tells us that caring involves stepping out of one's own personal frame of reference into the others. When we care, we consider the other's point of view, his objective needs, and what he expects from us. Our attention, our mental engrossment is on the cared for and not ourselves. Our reasons for acting then have to do with both the other's wants and desires and with the objective elements of his problematic situation. So this idea of caring really takes real effort. It is not a passive term. It really involves a cognitive and an attitudinal shift, if you will. And as educators, it becomes a real hallmark of the work that we all do inside the classroom. And Cooper goes on to say on page 12 that despite an overwhelming desire to support, care for, and relate deeply to pupils, teachers were continually constrained by the conditions in which they worked. Time was stolen from them by the nature of current educational system, the fragmented rigid curriculum, poor time, the time-poor nature of their working conditions, the bureaucracy. There's so many things that sort of get in the way of teachers who really want to care and show that they're there for their students. There's just so much going on in the environment that might prevent them from doing so. And Cooper looked at a lot of different studies on empathy, and he synthesized all of that work. And if you go to figure 1 on page 15, you get to see sort of the outcome of all of that synthesized research that he performed on prior studies. And once he went through and sifted, he found that there were basically 3 types of empathy when it comes to teaching and learning. These are the 3, and the characteristics that sort of circle these 3 types of empathy. And he discovered that when you look very closely, we have something called fundamental empathy and functional empathy, as well as profound empathy. So I want you all to take a look at that diagram, take a look at the article, and specifically look at these 3 types, and then the characteristics that are associated with these types. And what should really stick out for all of you is that I know you all have seen these types of empathy inside your classrooms as students, and that you've seen these characteristics play out as well. So I want you to look for them and identify them on your own. But for Cooper, he says that one of these types is better for us, is the best type to have implemented in the classroom. So do your work, take a look at that, and identify the type of empathy that is best expressed inside of a classroom. When you look on your right, you're going to see figure 2. You can find that on page 17. And on this figure, Cooper is identifying all these things that make up the environment and the classroom ambiance when it comes to the overall quality of learning inside the classroom. And he tells us that there are so many things coming at us, as educators, whether we're talking about teacher quality or time, or how many students are in the classroom, how we can manage the classroom. All of these items, all of these are constraints, and all of these are constantly affecting how much empathy and how deeply teachers can empathize with their learners because they're being bombarded by all of these factors that constrain how well we can empathize or exhibit empathy with our learners inside the classroom. As we move on, we find at the end of the article that there are these three findings that come out of this qualitative study with 16 teachers and 60 observations, and we find that they are identified below in the highlighted font. And these three types of interactions are related to empathy, and they are personalized intensive interaction, focused group interaction, and less focused group interaction. You are going to look them over and talk about them in your learning communities. But when we look further down, Cooper gives this somewhat big idea when it comes to the findings. And he says that these findings are particularly disturbing since the predominant model for children beyond the home is a non-valuing, stereotypical nature and must have consequences for their development. The factors identified here which reduce empathy in schools can also be found in universities and in other services of care. Perhaps we model and perpetuate an uncaring society by the strictures of our systems across many of the so-called caring services. And it's only by raising awareness and radically altering the context in which genuine carers work can we improve the personal, social, moral, and academic development of future generations. So he's saying this work that he found in his research, and the idea that there are these three types of interactions, some occurring more frequently than others. Ideally, when you read these types of interactions on your own, personalized, intensive interactions are going to be the predominant model for sure. But what our kids are getting a lot of is less focused kind of group interaction. And we need to make sure that they have the kinds of interactions that are more personalized, caring, and empathetic in nature. So after hearing the 4 E's of multicultural education and looking specifically at one of the E's of empathy, the big idea of this article for me is that we need to understand that students, when they come to us, especially in the K through 12 level, and this is our focus, that we have to understand that often they don't even remember the content that we share with them and those cute little lesson plans that we create. But they will always remember how we made them feel. And so Maya Angelou, she summarizes this statement best when she says in her quote, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, but will never forget what you did, but will never forget how you made them feel." The big idea, an attitude of caring, and when it comes to teaching and learning, emerges through profound empathy in one-to-one relationships. And in the end, we have to remember that relationships matter inside the classroom. Students need to know that we are there for them. When we are teaching inside of a K through 12 classroom, we're not just teaching the intellectual and teaching that cognitive side of the child. We are teaching the whole child. That means that we need to worry about their physical well-being, their intellectual well-being, as well as their moral and emotional well-being. We need to attend to the whole child in order for our students to progress. Thank you all, and gig 'em.